Today we're talking about a normal cast versus quick cast versus instant cast. This topic gets debated a lot among some people, thinking that there is a superior casting method in any regard. Some people think it's normal cast, some people think it's quick cast, and some people think it's instant cast. Instead of just dropping an opinion on this, I will show you the advantages of the different cast modes and talk about how they can be used effectively and be combined effectively as well. Let's first take a look at normal cast. This is what normal cast looks like. You select an ability and then you can move around freely until you click your mouse. You can still right click cancel the ability beforehand, and when you click, then the ability will be used. Same goes for your relics. You can set that up in the targeting settings in the escape menu. However, these are settings for all your relics and all abilities that are set to default. Abilities, on the other hand, can be set up individually if you press K and check those abilities. Otherwise, you change it as you can see here. And now we're looking at quick cast next. Quick cast is similar, only that the ability gets used the moment that you release the key. What you can already see here is that I don't really move to the right because my index finger is actually on the button that holds the ability. So as soon as I release it, I will release the ability, so I can't move right unless I use my middle finger in some cramped up position to do so. That's what I'm trying to do here, but it's not really the same kind of movement that you have compared to the normal cast. As you can see here with quick cast, it's the same. When it comes to activating your relics, I just right click cancel them here. That's also still possible on quick cast. And now we're looking at instant cast. Instant cast is probably the most irritating one when you first use it, because you actually don't get a targeter. The only targeter is the little circle, which you can move up and down obviously. But even relics get activated immediately and you don't get any option to cancel them or see the exact radius of anything. Looking into this a little deeper, this is what Vulcan's 1 looks like on normal cast. You can see that it actually ends up at the same place that the normal line ruler has this big mark, and this is how long most line abilities, not all, but most are. That means that realistically, once you've gotten used to the line ruler on the ground, you don't really need the normal cast for this ability. You will know exactly how far it goes, and you can see that here. The line indicator will show me exactly where my ability can still land on the target, so there's no reason for me to even use normal cast when I just could do the same thing on instant cast. Even the highlighting function works up to the same range. The turret, on the other hand, is different, as you want to place it in the middle of a fight, but you want to see how far it goes toward the sides. It's kind of hard to guesstimate that with instant cast. If you use normal cast, you can put it down that way, but usually quick cast works a little bit swifter here, especially in combination with the 1, and there's no real reason to put it on normal cast, as you're not going to take an extensive time targeting it. You will just place it down, approximately knowing where it will hit, and for that, quick cast is probably a very good option. Vulcan's 3, on the other hand, is something that you will often aim precisely, and you want to hit and target on the edges. For that, putting it on normal cast so you have the room to move around freely and then aim it is probably best. As you can see here, I'm combining it with the instant cast on the 1, so I don't have to take any longer time than necessary to target that, because I know exactly where it will land. And just to go over another example that showcases the same point, let's look at the ultimate. On normal cast, and I can move around freely, I can select where I want to go, and so on and so on. And I can have the ultimate up at all times. I can aim it as precisely as I want to, but I have the assurance that I can click right now and it will be immediately released no matter where I'm aiming. With quick cast, it's a little more complex because, once again, I can move around, but I'm not as free as in my movements, depending on my key bindings especially. With instant cast, the aim is gone. You can still aim past the point of where the target is, as you can see here, but it's absolutely freaking horrible to aim that way because you have no idea where exactly you're aiming at that point unless you've played the character for a very, very, very long time. And that brings us to what the decision between instant, normal, and quick cast should really be about. Normal cast should be for abilities that are typically not line abilities and have a long range, but have some kind of mechanic that requires you to aim them while walking. Many abilities that fall in this category are mage abilities, as they often have circle targeters, for example Scylla or Vulcan as mentioned before, Isis, stuff like that. They all have those abilities that you want to aim as precisely as possible, and therefore want to make sure to be able to move in order to get closer to your target, or move in a way that you can dodge something else before you hit the target. But at the same time, you may be facing some problems if you want to use these abilities really, really fast. It's possible because abilities in Smite have an internal cooldown between them anyways, so it's not something that would require you to be a Mortal Kombat level skilled player regarding the reaction time that you have, but it's still sometimes a bit of an effort to first use an ability by pushing a button and then clicking again in order to use it, or push the button twice. For example, in that very scenario you just saw there where I dodged, I feel like if it would have been on normal cast, I might have been just a split second too slow compared to using it on quick cast or instant cast here. Some abilities force you into normal cast after you use it for the first time. For example, Susanoo's 1. I think Nemesis Dash is also kind of like that. So you don't always get to choose, but most of the time you can. The next abilities are quick cast ones. Now, quick cast ones are probably what I favor a little too much, to be honest, simply because sometimes I should definitely go for instant cast instead. The big advantage of quick cast is that it usually makes it a little more intuitive because you don't have all those extra clicks, and at the same time it allows you to aim a little bit better than with the instant cast, especially on characters where you're not exactly familiar with the width of the abilities of that said god yet. What I especially like quick cast on are characters that have leaps, which have a certain radius and can deal decent damage or have other on-hit applications. For example, Hun Batz, whose 1 is something you want to use mid-fight in order to slow the enemy, but it will often be used as an escape as well. Therefore, it kind of makes sense for it to be as available as possible by also giving you the time to aim it. If you're very, very good with a character and you've gotten really used to the range, then you can do the same thing with instant cast. I personally don't like it that much for those purposes, especially with the health bar above the character, which gives you some issues regarding the targeter, as you sometimes have the targeter right behind your health bar, which even with transparency kind of feels awkward, especially when there are targets in front of you. For abilities that require a certain amount of aim and are expected to be held sometimes for a certain amount of time until you actually have the perfect aim towards a target, I would not recommend using this. A prime example of an ability that I would recommend using on quick cast is Ra's Solar Blessing. Ra's Solar Blessing is an ability that you will not just drop on a target to deal massive amounts of damage to them. It deals tick damage, so that's not that crucial. However, sometimes it's very important to get somebody in the radius or see how you can get as many targets as possible in the radius, especially when it comes to either minion waves or healing your teammates. You usually don't need to be all that mobile while aiming it because, once again, it's not often used in an offensive scenario. Therefore, I feel that for this ability, quick cast is the best by far. You will get an idea of how big the radius is, but it's not taking you longer than necessary to place down the ability. Obviously, it's not wrong to place it on instant cast or normal cast either, because in the sense of the purpose behind it, it doesn't make too much of a difference. It's just one of those abilities where I felt like pointing out how much sense quick cast can make despite of all the hate it's getting. Last but not least, there's instant cast. Instant cast is probably the most effective one when you get used to it on certain abilities. If you have an ability that is just a normal line range, or you are very sure of knowing the exact range of the ability, then instant cast is probably recommended. It gives you 0 delay, the ability comes out immediately, you have the highest chance of applying your damage and getting out of sticky situations depending on what you're doing. So in that regard, it is probably best. However, especially when you're not completely fluent on a character yet. And by fluent, I mean you know the characters in and out. So you've played him to mastery, whatever, 5 or something, and you really know how the character feels. Then instant cast can often be more of a downside than an upside, simply because you're gonna miss a lot more than you would otherwise. The clear advantage over quick cast here is that you can move freely while aiming, because you're aiming with your targeter, you're not aiming with the ability's targeter. While you can also do that in quick cast and then just release the ability that way, it will be a frame or so slower than doing so in instant cast. Normal cast is the same in that regard, just instant cast can allow you to get that ability off like slightly faster. This time difference has been ridiculously overstated in the past, so I want to point this out specifically. There are people who claim that it's actually faster to use normal cast and push the button and then click the ability than using quick cast for whatever reason they came up with. But given that people have played fighting games for decades on PC, we know very well that the frames between abilities work just as well as they do with anything else, and a button release on the keyboard is no different from the button push of a mouse, unless you have a keyboard that is just really, really bad and just got sticky keys or something like that. A mechanical keyboard might help in that regard, but once again, these mechanical differences are especially low when you consider that this is a game which is not purely about reaction time. In Smite, reaction time is important, but it's not the same as in a fighting game where you literally have one frame links between abilities. In Smite, abilities always have that internal cooldown in between, so that will slow you down anyways, regardless of which casting method you're using. In that sense, there isn't any stronger, superior casting method than others that fits all purposes. You have to consider what your character is, how the ability is applied, which could be the most effective way to use it. On a character like Vulcan, that would effectively mean putting one ability on instant cast, one on quick cast, and two on normal cast, which seems irritating at first, but makes sense when you look at the kit. Overall, I would generally recommend instant cast if you can afford to use it on that character in that way, but that's not always the case. So sometimes it's a matter of feeling comfortable, and that's very important. You play better when you feel comfortable with the key bindings. Don't just play instant cast because you think that will make you better. Play the way that feels best to you. And another thing that's worth pointing out in this regard, keep in mind that your key bindings are probably more important for aiming your abilities than your casting method will ever be. If you have quick cast and your key bindings are still 1, 2, 3, 4 for your abilities, you're gonna cramp up your hands trying to use them. That is about as ineffective as it may get. Some players, for example Captain Coach, have even completely unbound the key bindings from fingers that they use for movement, so they're using their abilities with their pinky finger and stuff like that. That's not for me, but it's definitely an option that is worth pointing out. This all will impact your play a lot more than the casting method itself, in my opinion. But it's something to keep in mind, and you can optimize your character by just looking at the abilities and checking which you feel will make most sense for a certain ability of your character. That's it for this video. I hope I cleared up some myth that exists in this regard, and I hope this was helpful and informative. Thank you guys for watching. New videos daily. Duke Sloth, out.